Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing with Delight podcast. I'm Delight Howley, your host, and my guest today is Rebecca Inkrote. She is a web designer who helps handmade businesses transition from using Etsy and platforms like that to having their own website. And I'm really interested to talk about that because I am that person. I have an Etsy. I have two Etsys and two websites, actually. And I'm not sure if I'm leveraging those things to their maximum, it's a lot to have all of that. And so I'm hoping for a little bit of clarity today from talking to Rebecca and just hearing her experiences and her some wins, some fails, some tips for websites for Etsy folks or handmade, crafty people. And I think these website tips can also apply to just about anybody. But we're going to specifically talk about it in the realm of like the handmade and craftiness stuff, which is super fun. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about you and like how you got started and how you landed here in this niche.
Yeah, it's kind of been a journey, as everyone experiences, but I was interested in graphic and web design from a young age, like middle school. And I started teaching myself pixel art and HTML early on. And then I went on in college to study graphic design. And when I graduated, I started working as a web designer right away for a small local marketing company. And around 2015, 2016 is when I started to strike it out on my own and do my own kind of thing on the side. I noticed that a lot of small business owners want a website, but yet they can't afford it always to hire a professional. So I thought, is there some way I can offer something to help these people get started, but not pay for a full professional? And around that same time, I started getting into handmade soap as a hobby. So I was in a lot of Facebook groups for Etsy sellers and different people who are in business with their craft. And I was noticing a lot of these artists and makers were really struggling with the website and the technology part. And I'm thinking, well, I can help you. That's my thing. So I really wanted to kind of hone in on that industry because I love creative people. I love looking at the beautiful things that people make. And so if I could make websites for people who make beautiful things and are passionate about what they do, instead of websites for construction workers and lawyers and real estate agents, that would be more interesting to me. So that's kind of where I focused in on that and focused in on teaching. I really enjoy teaching. So I've created a program and a course to help teach people how to make their own website.
Yeah, that really makes sense. It feels like your brand and your niche and your expertise is very grounded. Like when I was looking through your Instagram, I thought it's very clear what she does and who she helps and what she's doing. And I know from my experience, this is a need for sure, to have that in between when you're not quite, you haven't made enough money in your business to justify like hiring something out completely, but you also feel overwhelmed to do it yourself. So you do nothing, or there needs to be some kind of like middle ground, which is what you're, one of the needs that it sounds like you're filling. But I wanted to ask you actually back to the earlier what you said about being younger and being into web and graphic design. How did you have, okay, so this is kind of a weird question because for me, I've always been interested in art, but I didn't have any confidence in myself when I was younger. So I'm wondering, like, how did you have the confidence, you're saying in middle school, high school, to be interested in this and go like, this is something I'm good enough at art or like design, or I have a good enough eye to pursue this? Like, what was that like for you, like mentally?
This is interesting because I never considered myself an artist. And people would tell me, oh, you're an artist, you have creative abilities, you're artsy, you should be an art major. And I'm thinking, I can't draw anything. I don't know how to paint. I'm not an artist. What are you talking about? So I always thought it was interesting that people would tell me I was an artist as a kid, but I didn't feel like that. So in terms of the web design, I was always drawn to that because I feel like it's more forgiving because it's pixels. And so if you don't get it right, you can easily just delete it and start over. Whereas if you're painting, if you start messing things up, then it's like, you kind of got to throw the whole thing out and start over, or paint over the whole thing white again, or, I felt like it was easy to just delete something and try again. And also web design is very organized and grids and layouts, and that kind of worked with my brain better. I like geometry, I like math. And when I started going to college, I actually did not go to art. I didn't go for art. I went for computer science because I thought, I'm a geek, I'm a computer nerd, I need to be in computer science. And I did the first semester, took the coding class. I was like, okay, this is cool, a little bit challenging, not really applicable to web design at all, but let's go with it. The second semester, I thought, did I miss something? Because we're speaking a whole nother language now, and I don't know what you're talking about. So that's when I dropped that major and switched to fine arts, Bachelor of Fine Arts, graphic design concentration. And that I felt a lot more at home. But yeah, so in terms of confidence, I just feel like with the web design and the coding and the HTML and the straight lines, like I just felt like that was more my style. And so, yeah, I never really have confidence as an artist, and I still don't.
Well, I'm glad I asked you about that, because that's super interesting to me, because I have been on that journey too. And I really relate to what you're saying about, I never thought of it that way, with web design being like related to math and like just knowing some HTML and all of that. And that's so true. And that for me is partly why I do like Facebook ads, because it's the same thing where it's like the combination, you got to have some creative there. You got to have like the copy and the graphic, but then you have to analyze the data and get the pixel installed and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like you and I have that in common, where we have both like the creativity and like the math and the numbers, which I think isn't super common. So I think that we have it, like, that's why it's great that you're doing what you're doing, because you can help the people who are way further on the creative side and don't have much the tech and math kind of capacity. You can kind of help them like bridge that gap. I think that's a great way to use, those gifts that you have when you kind of have a little bit of both. But yeah, I think it also makes it, maybe that's partly what makes it harder for people like us to feel really confident in being artistic too, because you don't quite fit in that like archetype, because you do have the math or the tech or whatever types of skills too. I don't know, but
I think part of it is because with web design, you're not really straying too far off the beaten path of, this is how a website looks. The logo's at the top, the navigation is at the top or on the left, and there's certain ways that you present the material where you're communicating a message, and I feel like it's just a lot more straightforward, whereas art is so open-ended and creative, and you're making something out of nothing. And at least with web design, I have a framework. And so I can work within my framework. And then when you start telling me to just do whatever, that's where my brain just says,
Yeah, that makes sense. There's like a structure and like best practices with website stuff. I agree. That also is a really good starting place for me when I've made several of my own websites, and I made a couple of websites for people in my local community for like volunteering and things like that. And I'm always like relieved by that it's like, okay, this is at the top. We need a big photo for the banner. We need, you can kind of just like fill in like a Mad Libs, like fill in the blanks, a lot of the time. Right. So let's see. I wanted to ask you about the story of the time where you were launching your online course and you were a little bit disappointed with how it went. And then you were able to like shift things and get a better result a couple years later. So I love hearing stories of like failure, not giving up, and like continuing, because I think we all need to hear those stories to keep going.
Right. So I started teaching people how to make their website in 2016. And I got a couple people on board and I taught them and I felt good about it. And then I launched a few times. And then in 2018, I launched one last time before I had my daughter. So I was pregnant. I was ready to have my daughter. I was like, let me launch this one more time because I'm not going to be able to, do this again for a while. And so all these launches up until that point were decent. Like I was okay. I got a few people in, I helped them get a few more people in. In 2020, so from 2018 to 2020, I did almost nothing with my business because I had a newborn at home. My husband was at work. I was at home completely focused on that. So I was just barely keeping my business alive. That was like, I was doing the bare minimum. So in 2020, I was ready to get back into it. And so my first launch back, I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I just did a pretty casual promotion. I tried to do like a paid miniature presentation, and then that was going to lead into the full event. But I think I only got like a couple people, like one person into the initial first little paid workshop, which was, like a $15 workshop or something, or 25 bucks. And so I was like, okay, well, I got one person. I don't think they showed up live. And then I was supposed to pitch my course to one person. And I was thinking, this didn't make sense. So I was really bummed about how that went, of course, because I thought after 2 years, people probably are chomping at the bit to finally I'm opening my course again, but it was just a flop. So then I didn't really do anything again launching my course until this spring. I don't know if I was just feeling I knew that the material needed to be updated inside the course. So I was a little hesitant on pushing it a lot. And I was kind of keeping myself busy with the one-on-one building websites. So it wasn't until this past spring that I launched it again. And I did it the same way, but this time I think I just had some new people in my sphere, in my audience, because I had been a lot more active, attracting people, putting out some content here and there. And so I think that the fact that my list was a little bit more fresh and warmed up, that people were, it's not like they hadn't heard from me in 2 years. So they were a little bit more familiar with me and what I had to offer. And then I would say, did you want me to go into like how the second one was successful or?
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely seeing some, I like to think of this like an ecosystem, right? There's like a lot of things that go into a successful, like a launch flopping or a launch succeeding. And I'm like wanting to analyze it and like pick apart some of the things, but we know it's more than the sum of its parts, there's almost like a magic to it sometimes. But I'm just picking up on what you've said so far. Like, it sounds like the 2021 was tough because you had been pretty quiet for so long and then you came back. So I think that was probably a huge part. And then when was it in 2020? Was it like peak pandemic times? Like
Probably.
What was the timing there?
I think it was in the summer. So okay. Yeah, it was all still pretty fresh.
Right. So that, I think that actually helped some people. For me, I actually had a pretty busy year in 2020 because I think people were getting some of the like the government assistance loans and stuff. And they're like, oh, let's grow my business and advertise. So, but for other, I think it was a total crapshoot on how it affected everybody's businesses. But that's huge. I think what you're saying about the second time you had been posting, did you have an email list? Were you emailing people as well?
I have always had an email list, and I've always been very poor about consistency when it comes to just putting out content and keeping in touch. But this more recent time, I was very, I had a runway and I planned out things that I was going to send out in the lead up. So content, helpful things to get people starting to think about, am I ready for a website? Is this going to benefit me? Kind of preparing them to think, okay, yes, this is probably something I should be thinking about in my business, and this is going to be the next good step for me. And then when I pitched I did it the handmade website jumpstart as like a 3-day kind of workshop. I got a lot more positive feedback and people who were interested, and got a fair amount of people in. And
it
then,
was paid, right?
yeah, it was
How-
$39.
Okay. 39 for a 3-day workshop. Okay.
Yeah. And the one thing I think that really helped with that one was having someone else partnering with me who had a really large audience that was in this handmade space, specifically like crochet business. And she shared my Jumpstart course with her audience. And since they already love and trust her, I think that that trust helped people jump into my course. And so that pretty much doubled the audience for that first initial workshop. And then when I went to go pitch my full program, I had really good results from the group that was in that initial workshop converting into joining my group program, which this time I ran it as a group program instead of as just a self-paced course, because I think a lot of people need a little bit more hand-holding, ability to ask questions specific to their situation, and a little bit more accountability. And hey, keep going, keep doing this, because a lot of people will start off with a bang and then they just get distracted and life gets in the way and then they just drop the whole project.
Yeah. Makes sense for sure. So yeah, so you changed a lot. It sounds like you changed a lot of things between the 2020 launch and the 2022 launch.
Yeah.
Who is the crochet person that helped you? I'm looking for people to follow or that you teamed up with.
Yeah, her name is Pam Grice, and her her business is the Crochetpreneur, and she has
I've seen her.
lots
Okay.
of really good info.
Yeah, I've seen her stuff too. So I've just been like doing my own stuff with my crochet, and I've been looking for people to follow and repin and all of that stuff. So yeah, I remember seeing some of her posts. So yeah, she does seem to have like a pretty big following. How did you get connected with her to do this launch together?
We
or
are
like
both,
have her share for you?
Yeah, we are both members in another like online business mentoring program.
Okay.
And so I was posting in that group like, hey, how can I make my launch go better? And she was like, hey, we're kind of in the same space, maybe we can partner. And that was awesome. Very serendipitous.
I think that's some of the best value that I've gotten from when I've invested in like a mastermind group or like a business course or anything like that, is that connecting with the other people in there for that kind of thing. Like that's really how I grew my business, was that I was in B school way back in 2014, and I connected with people that way, and then they referred other people to me, and it kind of went that way. So I think that's like, actually I was in a mastermind with a bunch of other Facebook ads folks, and we were all thinking about like some of them had like specifically invested in one of the $2,000 courses in order to network, like because they knew like Facebook ads was a part of the course, and they wanted to be in that group when people were like, who can help you with this Facebook ads, and they're like, so I just looked at this as an investment. Like I didn't really need to learn this stuff, but I wanted to be there, and I was like, that's really smart.
That is interesting.
Yeah, so that was a creative idea that one of my mastermind gals had done, and I thought, I haven't seen anything recently that like speaks to me that way, but I think it's like it's not a bad idea, to network with other, or just like remember that when you're deciding on an investment in a program or a mastermind, that making those types of connections can really help, as well as getting all the information.
Yeah.
So your program is, like you said, it's not just a course, it's a group program. Are you having like coaching calls and things like that for people along their way?
Yes. So I think the next time that I run it, I'm going to probably do it the same way, focus mostly on the group program aspect of it. But now that all of the content is updated, I do feel confident also selling it as a self-paced, smaller option. So I think I'm going to have it kind of like a two-tier option. So I'm really mostly pushing the the group program because I think that's where people are going to have the most success. And yes, we're doing I don't know if they were coaching calls. They were like Q&A. So jump on, ask me questions. Let's go through your site and look at it. It's more like a hot seat and Q&A type situation. Because I felt like all the material was already really well laid out inside the course. So I didn't feel like I needed to be teaching or coaching. Just really answering questions and giving people some clarity. And yeah, so I think I'm going to offer a lower tier option in case people aren't ready for the whole group program experience. If they just want to do it on their own time, still offering that as an option too now.
Yeah, that seems smart. And I think that's kind of hard to decide sometimes for people how to structure their program or their course. Like, is there this live component or not? And then like, pricing. So, and some people, and that kind of makes sense to me because some people are very independent. They don't want the hand holding. They don't want to pay for that. They could just take the information and go with it. But I think a lot of people, especially sounds like your ideal client is someone who is maybe easily overwhelmed or intimidated with tech stuff. So they probably are the type that would appreciate the more of the hand holding and the personal feedback. I think that's so valuable. We have so many online courses that we can take, but to have an expert like look at my work and give me feedback and say like, this looks really good. Here's something that I'm seeing that you need to tweak, that's really, really valuable. So it makes sense that you definitely have that component in your program.
Yeah, that was, like you said, one of the big changes from 2020 to this time. And I think that people really resonated with that offer.
So what are you doing now as far as, continuing to build your audience and market yourself? Like what's working for you now? I see that you're pretty active on Instagram. I think do you have a Facebook group as well?
Yeah, I have a Facebook group.
So what do you feel is working the best for you, like right now, like 2022?
So for me, as I discovered from this last launch with that kind of partnership situation, it just seems like all of the times that I have combined forces with someone in the way of like being a guest on a podcast or exchanging freebies and sharing it with each other's audiences or any kind of collaboration where we're kind of working together and exchanging like cross promoting, those have been really good for me. And like I said, being a guest on podcasts. So finding other people who serve the same type of audience, but in a different way so that we can not compete, but we're complementing each other and amplifying each other's offers and free content and just kind of getting people. That's the way that I'm getting visibility. That's been working slowly. But then the way that I've been connecting and having a lot of fun is inside of my Facebook group. If you join the group, I'm doing website help desk happy hour on maybe one Friday a month at 4:00 Eastern. So we just all get on, we've got a drink or you've got a tea or water, whatever you want to drink, but we're just kind of all hanging out really casual. And if anybody wants to pick my brain about their website, I'm here. If not, we're just going to talk about all kinds of things like what's working, marketing, what we're seeing, trends, all kinds of just fun stuff. It's just an hour to hang out and work at the end of a Friday, but not work. Start your weekend early.
That's so fun. I love that. That's so creative too. So you're going live in the group?
I'm doing it on Zoom, but you have to be in the group to get the invitation because I set it up as an event in the Facebook group, but it all takes place on Zoom because it's just, I feel like it's easier to have a back and forth. I have not tried, I think there is a group video call in the groups, but I have never tried it.
Yeah, me either. They change. It seems like every time I want to go live in my Facebook group, they've changed it, and I'm stumbling around like, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be an expert at this stuff, but it's just, there's too much to like know how to do everything all the time. So yeah, that's really fun. I'm like, that's definitely got my ideas going of like, what could I do like that? You know, that would be just like a fun community thing. Yeah, I like that for you know, like it's funny. I just did another interview yesterday and asked, you know, what's working. And she pretty much said the same thing of like connecting with other people and like networking, just almost like you're doing it digitally, but it's still like almost like an old fashioned, you know, just person to person. And also, like you said, like being a podcast guest and things like that are kind of like a slow burn, but really can like, you know, add up over time.
Right.
Yeah. It's just funny how, you know, we have all this technology and all these new things, and now we have Instagram Reels and TikTok and all this stuff. And it's like, you know, what typically can work the best is just to like, you know, get to know people, collaborate with people, like amazing.
Yeah. Every time I try the next shiny bells and whistles, I just like what you're saying with going live in the Facebook group when they keep changing things. I just stumble around. I don't know how long I took yesterday to make one reel that was really basic. It took me way too long to try to get the text to show up on the beat of the, yeah, it was bad.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. It worked. You got it.
After like an hour of fiddling with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I just find that the collaboration just comes so much easier. Like just talking to another person and just helping each other when they've got good value and you've got good value and you serve the same people. It's like you want to share that with your people because it's another way that you can help your own audience succeed. So why wouldn't you share that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just thought of something I wanted to ask you about the web, back to the website versus Etsy stuff. So like for me, I have my Etsy because, well, like my crochet Etsy I've had since 2011. So it has some, you know, I don't know, the algorithm will help me reach people to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But I only have a couple of my crochet patterns actually on my own website, and people occasionally buy them. And I'm like, and it's just so tedious to like move everything. And like on Squarespace, you have to resize the photos to be more like square so they look right. Like I tried importing all my Etsy listings, but like everything was funky and it didn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious on your perspective, and you're more working with people who don't have a website at all yet. Like I do, I just feel like I'm underutilizing it maybe. Like, what would you say to that as far as like, is it worth it to spend the time to get all these things up on the website and as opposed to just on Etsy?
Yeah. This is where I'm going to go against what would make me more money and say a lot of times you're not ready and it's too much. Don't tackle the website yet. A lot of people, I think, tackle the website thing way too early and they end up just making a lot more work for themselves and struggling through it for very little reward, very few sales on the website. And then they just give up because they have a sour taste in their mouth. I spent all this time and money getting my website up, hours and hours of YouTube searching and pulling my hair out and trial and error. And then for what? And then trying to keep it updated for what? So I highly recommend to people to go for Etsy first. If you have a handmade business or if you fit the profile for being on Etsy or Amazon Handmade or whatever marketplace situation, get on there first because Etsy already has tons of traffic, targeted traffic, people who are looking to purchase handmade things. Like when they get on Etsy, they are your ideal customer already and they're looking for you. And so to be able to get that visibility and have the opportunity to get in front of those people and make a sale, and Etsy has such a low barrier to entry, you know, you just put up your logo, a banner, and some products, and you're ready to go. There is no designing the whole layout of the site. It's already done. You just plug and play, put your products in, and start getting some momentum. And then you're going to get feedback. People are going to like your products or they're not. And you're going to see ways that you can get better and ways that you can pivot. And as you start getting your social media platform going and you're working on your photos and getting better photos, and as your business becomes more seasoned, then you're going to be pivoting. There's no doubt in my mind that your very first product is going to be the same thing as what you're selling 1 or 2 years down the road. You're going to have made it better. You're going to use better quality materials. Your skill is going to be better. And overall, you're going to have a better product. And you're probably going to have better photography, and you're going to know who your ideal customer is, and you're going to be able to have your logo better and your photos better. So I really think it's important to have the photos done, really good photos, your logo and your branding and your messaging and your unique selling proposition. What makes you different, better? Why are people going to buy from you rather than anybody else? What makes you unique? And just having the visual branding and everything ready and making sales. You got to have the income and the revenue to support the website, because with Etsy, you only really have to pay when you're making money. Like, you pay a percentage of the sale. That's kind of where the bulk of the fees are. So the more you sell, the more that you're paying. Whereas a website, you have to pay for that website whether you're making sales or not. So it doesn't make sense to be paying that when you're not set up to have the traffic and make the sales. Only after you have a following and people like repeat customers and an email list or a social media following or some kind of PR thing coming up, that's when it's time to start worrying about the website. And I don't recommend people totally switching either, like turning off the Etsy to switch to website. I really think they work in tandem. Etsy for marketing, visibility, getting new people in, and then for your website for really connecting with your loyal customers and being more profitable and giving that brand experience.
Yeah, that's really good. That makes sense. I see a lot of parallels in kind of what I tell people about starting with Facebook ads too, is like kind of how you're saying, like, well, maybe you're not ready, maybe it's not time, and then it's like, well, I don't get to like work with this person, but it's going to be better in the long run, because yeah, these things do go in phases and you can feel like you need to do everything all at once. So that's like good clarity for me too, is like, I'm just kind of balancing, how am I doing all this stuff where I have this marketing stuff and I have this crochet stuff, and where am I spending my time, all that kind of thing. So that's useful to think about it from that, like, you don't have to do everything, all the time. But you want to, I also like trying new things and seeing kind of what works and what's worth continuing,
Right.
And I think there's a lot of things I could do eventually if I were able to scale to where I could hire some help for some of it too, because there's a lot of tedium in there of like repurposing content between different places. Like I was saying, like that would be of the moving the Etsy listings over to the website. That would be a great place to be able to ask someone for help, hire someone to sit there and like copy and paste the description, reformat the size of the image, all that kind of thing. So right. I think that totally makes sense and I do love Etsy too, for that reason, that they are going to, like, I think getting attention and bringing an audience and finding your people when you're newer is a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot to do, and Etsy can really kind of like jump start that and help, you connect with people.
Right.
So I find that extremely valuable. And I've really enjoyed Etsy. Like for me, I was thinking about it, and with my crochet Etsy, like it's helped me every single year. Like a lot of people get stressed when it's the holidays because like we have a big family, we have lots of gifts to give. And like crochet has always helped me with that, because I always made gifts for people. And then when I started my Etsy shop, this is that's the most prime time of year. So I'm always having some extra income that time of year to help with that. And I'm like, just for that alone, to like help enjoy the holidays more, it's never been a full-time income for me, but it's been extremely helpful in those times.
Yeah. Everybody in my family gets soap for Christmas.
So are you still selling soap, or are you just making for your friends and family?
Mostly just for personal use and friends and family. I was selling it for a while, and I kind of tried to do the soap thing and the web design thing at the same time. Don't start two businesses at the same time. That's a really bad idea. And so I was giving a little bit of focus to each one and not getting anywhere with either. So I kind of set the soap aside. I was like, I can still do this for fun. I still enjoy it. I still have all the tools and stuff, but the web design is, I think, what's going to help me financially faster. So I've kind of put all my focus in there, and the soap thing has just sat on the back burner for a very long time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds familiar. I used to also I would sell my handmade crocheted, mostly hats. And I don't do that anymore, partly because of everything you're saying of like, there's only so much time. Where am I going to make the best money, and how is it going to work? I like, it's hard with handmade stuff, really, for the amount of time it takes you to do it and then market it and then put it on Etsy and all this stuff and build your audience. And then the price that you can charge for it on the end doesn't, like, for me with hats, the numbers didn't really work unless,
Crochet
so
is really hard, I think.
yes, and also I think it's those things that aren't super valued. I think if you're doing something like jewelry, people are used to paying like a higher price point, and you could make some pieces. When you get good at it, you can make pieces really quickly. And I know there's a lot of competition and all that stuff, but like crocheting
Yes.
takes, maybe like a couple hours to make a hat. And then, like, how much can I sell a hat for? So, I mean,
Right.
people do it. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And I prefer to just do the patterns and have passive income.
Yeah,
But
I do very often think about getting back into selling soap, but I just don't have the space right now in our living space to dedicate to have like a little studio set up, because getting everything out and then using our table and then putting everything, it's just not feasible. But when I first started selling my soap, I was new to everything about running your own business, marketing, Etsy, SEO. Like I only knew the web design part and the branding part. So that I was good on, but all the other things, making your booth look good at a craft show and getting into all these different craft fairs, and there's just a lot. And I tried to do all of it, and I didn't really do very well with it. And I gave up pretty quickly because I just switched gears. But now, knowing what I know now, I'm like, I think I could really be successful at it if I gave it another shot. So it's definitely something I want to do again in the future. And at least with soap and maybe some other things too, you can scale it up. I can make a bigger batch and pour a bigger mold, and then you're making a lot more for not that much more time. So I feel like that's kind of something that's really helpful compared to individual art pieces. I mean, I guess with individual art, you can do reproductions, but some things, it just takes how much time it takes, and you can't scale it like crochet.
Yeah. I guess one thing I did back in 2017, when we were doing the Women's March with all the pink pussy hats, I did scale that because I had so many orders, I couldn't do it. And I did have some people crocheting for me, following my patterns, and everybody was, and I was just randomly finding these people online to help me like fill these, and I, provided them with like half of the fee, So anyway, that worked out pretty well. So that was one way, I guess, that you can scale it. And I remember one gal was like somebody who was kind of on disability and who couldn't do too much besides crocheting, and she was able to make a really nice hat. And I was able to provide her with a little bit of income for making, I don't know, 10 hats for me or something. So I guess that's one way, but that for me that feels hard. Like you're like a
Right.
project manager at that point. There's so much logistics, and I was able to make it work for that brief time when I had this big rush with that trend. And then I didn't need to do it going forward because I didn't have, that was like a peak moment in history. So
Yeah. I think that with a lot of handmade, there's certain aspects that you can start to think about scaling on a smaller scale. Like maybe you can scale part of the process. So for instance, if you're making mittens, I have a couple friends that make handmade mittens out of sweaters. You can outsource all the cutting. They cut all the pieces, and somebody's job is just to cut all the pieces out. And then you're doing the actual stitching. And then you can pay somebody to pack and ship all the orders. Like you're the artist. You don't need to be the one putting things in a box and putting a label on it and printing out postage. So that, and then, scheduling your pickup. So I think there's ways that you can introduce scaling and outsourcing in the process and still be the main artist hands-on and still putting your love into the product, but also still getting some help so that you can scale better.
yeah, that's a really good point. For me, that's what if I were to sell stuff again, I would try to get help with the shipping part, especially that part. I really, that was very tedious to me. Like I could sit there and crochet the same stitch over and over and over with black yarn over and over and over. Cause that's the other thing, is that people kept ordering just a basic black hat over and over and over, sometimes green, sometimes gray, but mostly black, so then you get bored with that too.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I think handmade stuff, I think you can definitely build a whole empire. I think it's just like finding, what works for you. And for me, like I'm really liking the patterns and tutorials more so than I enjoy sitting there cranking out stuff, to sell physical product.
Right.
So I missed my segue a little while ago to talk about your free lead magnet of the comparing. So it's a calculator that can help compare the cost of an Etsy shop versus a website, right?
Exactly. So you basically, if you've already got your Etsy and you're running for a little while, and then you're starting to see success on Etsy, and then you're wondering, is a website going to pay off financially? Is this going to be a good return on my investment? Am I going to build this thing and then actually have some revenue from it? Or is it going to be a flop? I created this calculator to start to give you a little bit of insight as to how this might play out. So what you do is you go into your Etsy stats, and there's 3 boxes, I think, on the calculator that you fill out with like how many orders you had, what was your total sales in a certain period, and something else. And then, the percentage of traffic that you drove to your shop versus the percentage of traffic Etsy drove. Because whatever traffic Etsy is driving, you are not going to have that on your website. You really only want to consider the traffic that you can drive to your own shop. So I kind of did that percentage, and everything in the calculator starts to multiply by that percentage. So you're only taking into effect, if you sell on your website, that's the only revenue you're going to have. So it kind of helps you determine, if you were to drive all of your own traffic to your own website instead of pushing people to Etsy, what would your revenue be when you're comparing the different fees? Because Etsy has the listing fee and the transaction fee and the payment processing fee, and your website has the hosting fee, the domain fee, any kind of themes or plugins, and you still have the payment processing fee. So it kind of has all those different numbers in there, and you can kind of play around with it and just see. And at the bottom, it's going to tell you which one is going to be, which one is going to be more profit.
Yeah, that sounds really useful for getting clarity on, is it the right time to get my own website going, or to make my marketing efforts for my own site as opposed to Etsy. So we'll link that in the show notes for sure.
Great.
So people
Yes.
can check that out. And so then last question for you about the reclaimed guilty pleasure. Did you have anything? You had shared earlier that it was hard for you to think of something in this category, something that you enjoy just for the joy of it.
Yes. As you said, the guilty pleasure, I have struggled hard with guilt. And taking time for myself. I think mothers can relate, and business owners can relate, and significant others can relate, that you do pour a lot into other people and into your work, and then you forget to pour into yourself. So one thing that I'm working on reclaiming is roller skating. So years ago, I played roller derby. I played for probably 7 years.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I loved it, but I just haven't been able to do it. And there's not a team. I moved recently to Raleigh, North Carolina area, and there's the 2 teams that are near me are still 45 minutes away. So I'm like, I don't think I could make it to practice all the time, because you're practicing, 3 nights a week, 2 hours each.
Wow.
So it's a lot to commit to. And but I can still skate outside. I can still go to the local rink, so I'm trying to get back into skating more for myself, just for fun.
Oh, I love that. That's so fun. It's funny that you're saying that too, because I'm doing something really out of my comfort zone. I started a project to make some crochet pants just for fun, not to sell to anybody, just for me to like learn a new part of it. And I'm just immediately, when you said roller skating, I thought of the photo on the Etsy listing where I got this pattern for the pants, had this gal wearing these pants and with roller skates. And I was
very
just like,
retro.
Yes, very retro, very hippie kind of look. I mean, they're flared, pants.
Of course.
Yeah, very fun. So I love that. It just seems so joyful to like roller skate,
Absolutely. It's once I put wheels on, I can't help but smile,
Yeah.
You're just free.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I can't imagine how like driving 45 minutes each way for a 2-hour practice, like 3 nights a week when you're a business owner and a mom and everything else, like that sounds rough. But yeah, I think for me, that's something where I'm like, oh, well, I can't do the full thing. Like I can't be on this team right now. This, not the time in my life. So I'm not going to do anything ever. I'm never going to skate, in this example. That's kind of how it's like the all or nothing,
Right.
So I think that's great that you're able to get past that and be like, I can still enjoy this, even though I'm not super serious about it right now. I can just do it for fun.
Yeah. And now I'm fighting against the weather, because here in North Carolina, it's been hot.
Oh, I
so
bet.
I'm going to have to go to the rink instead of outside, because it's just too hot to skate outside.
Yeah. Then that's not joyful anymore. That's just like melting in a puddle and dying. Well, thank you so much for being here. What's the best place for people to connect? Is it your Facebook group, your Instagram? Which place?
Probably my Facebook group or Instagram, either one. So the Facebook group is, if you go to creativebiz.club, that'll redirect you to the Facebook group. And on Instagram, I'm BexMarie_. And for that freebie, that was on my website, and that's bexmarie.com/calculator. So that's kind of easy to remember. And that's kind of the best places to get in touch with me. I always answer my DMs in Instagram. So that's kind of a good way to talk to me. And then in the group is good to connect with everybody, including myself, and join those happy hours.
Super fun. Well, thank you so much for being here. And we will. Hey, how am I ending this podcast? Like, I can't remember how my little, cheers to your success. That's how I'm trying to end the podcast. And that totally goes with your happy hour. Cheers to your success.
Cheers.